Your name. So visitors from across the world travel to the United States to take advantage of all the great things there are to do and see in our nation. And in the second district of Florida, and indeed across our entire state, tourists enjoy white sand beaches, state and national parks with diverse wildlife, first-class fishing and water sports, and some of the world's great golf courses. The state of Florida saw a record number of visitors for the 10th consecutive year just before the pandemic. In fact, in 2019, contributed $97 billion to Florida's economy, supporting over 1.6 million jobs. Unfortunately, in 2020, we all know what happened. The pandemic grounded the United States tourism industry to a complete stop. And the many families who rely on this industry sustained substantial losses and were often forced to close the doors of their businesses their livelihoods depended on. Fortunately, the response by the Florida governor and legislature was inspiring across multiple industries, and they were ready to respond at the height of the pandemic. Because of their leadership, Florida exceeded visitor projections for every quarter in 2021, and so far this year, setting records. According to data from the U.S. Travel Association, Florida's recovery to travel has outpaced other states' recoveries in every month since February of 2021. The United States and the federal government should learn from the governors of these states that were so successful and the industry leaders in those states as well. I have a question for Ms. Tori Barnes. When the CDC puts out confusing or conflicting guidance, as they did throughout the pandemic, how does this affect your industry, the decisions that they make in their planning?
Thank you for the question. And no, absolutely, we've absolutely seen a very uneven recovery. But I think from what you laid out, one of the most important takeaways is that we can have health and safety measures in place, and we can return to business practices that enable folks to move about, and that is absolutely critical. I think Florida was, in fact, a really good example of letting businesses continue to thrive. And so what we really need from the government is clear, consistent policies across the board and not a patchwork approach. The reason that we are seeing such an uneven recovery is because we've got a different environment in different states. And the international front in particular, as I noted, we still have this pre-departure testing requirement, which is not based on science at this juncture, but simply CDC keeping a strong hold on that particular provision. So we couldn't agree more that the policies that Florida have taken have enabled health and safety as well as economic recovery, and that's critical to what we need for the whole of the travel and tourism industry.
So do you think then that input from industry leaders, people, your members, to the federal agencies, Department of Commerce, CDC, other agencies, when they publish guidelines, shouldn't they be consulting with you so that they can understand, they have a clear, much more clear interpretation, and we all get consistent messaging? Wouldn't that help?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And quite frankly, early on in the pandemic, we as an industry put together a health and safety guidance on our own to ensure that we had an even higher degree of health and safety than we already had within the industry. And we couldn't agree more that we need to have consistent messaging. There needs to be collaboration. And I think that's why this legislation is so important. We need to make sure that there is someone that is prioritizing the travel industry within the government. Again, that's why we would like to see.
Well, I thank you very much for your answer. Our time is growing short, but for the record, I agree that informed input by specialized knowledge is usually a better thing. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back. Thank you.
You're muted.